switching takes actually so much time and effort and just discipline and accountability and communication, because you got to talk, touch, take, come together. You've got to be aware of everything. You know, your head's got to be constantly on a swivel. You've got to be able to defend in the post. I like to front the post. I think the key with switching is, can you defensive rebound? Defensive rebounding is the key no matter who's on who.
Welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the coach Coach Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. Josh Pastner, our guest today, started working for Lute Olson at the University of Arizona, one of the great iconic coaches in college basketball history. Went on then to work as an assistant for John Calipari at Memphis with Derrick Rose, became the head coach when Cal went to Kentucky. He just blew out Memphis. He was just unbelievable there. Coached against him, incredible coach, great teacher, went to Georgia Tech, had fabulous seasons, won the ACC championship, changed his whole style of coaching, which I think you're going to find incredibly fascinating, and then took over a team at UNLV that was really down. So he's going into his second year, and I think he's going to tell you all the things that he has to go through. So again, we're going to take a quick time out for our sponsors, but I want to make sure I remind all of our listeners here, our early bird savings only has a few days left for Coaching You Live in Las Vegas on July 10, 11, and 12. You get terrific savings if you sign up by May 15th. So you only have a couple of days. Go to coachingyoulive.com/2026. Please take advantage of this. We want to see you in Vegas. Incredible lineup of NBA coaches that you're going to love learning from. We'll be right back. Noah Basketball is our new presenting sponsor of our Coaching You podcast. Noah Basketball is a shot tracking and data company that has helped change how coaches and players perfect the game's most important skill, shooting. Noah is a data service provider that uses machine learning and the latest computer vision technology to provide real-time data and feedback to improve shooting accuracy and consistency for professional and amateur basketball players. Noah has now analyzed over 570 million shots from countless high school, hundreds of college teams, and 28 NBA franchises. The technology is simply amazing. Once the system has been installed, players will be able to get immediate feedback on their shooting arc, left and right positioning, depth, makes or misses, and makes the data available to players and coaches on your mobile device. For more information about how Noah can help your team, visit noahbasketball.com. Here we're back with Josh Pastner, the head coach of UNLV. Josh, welcome, my friend.
Coach, thanks for having me on. It's always an honor to be on, to be with a legend like yourself, one of the greats in the history of the game of basketball.
Damn.
And you did not pay me to say that. I'm speaking from the heart.
I think you're coming from you want me to be an NIL supporter of yours, but I will do that.
That's what I should. You know what? I should charge you for doing the podcast, not for money for me, but to help go get a player. You know what I mean?
That's what we should have done. Now, I have done almost 400 episodes with unbelievable people, from Isaiah Thomas to Tony Dungy to ridiculous folks. Very rarely when I have a coach on, for some reason, have I ever lost to the coach that I have on.
Okay.
We might not have played, okay, but and usually if it's an NBA guy, I beat him half of the time, etc. This is someone I never beat as a coach. When you were at Memphis, man, you just kicked Donnie Jones in my ass. It was great.
Well, we had some great battles there. We had some great games. As you know, there's one or two that came down to the wire for some buzzer shots that we were fortunate enough to win. But, and you know, I love Donnie as a person, as a coach, just like yourself. And you guys had so many great teams there. And but yeah, we had some great battles. But I tell you, you know, just thinking about that, my teams at Memphis, we had some great players, I mean, we played fast, we were above the rim, played great defense. We had some great teams during that time period there.
It was amazing, and I love the FedEx Forum,
Yep,
and the place was packed
yep,
all the time.
absolutely.
We were more worried about the Grizzlies couldn't get a crowd back then, right?
That's right.
It was so amazing, and then there were some nights, though, where we were there, and it was like, "Donnie, don't you even think about getting thrown out because I'm coming right behind you. I ain't staying here getting my ass kicked by Josh." But, tell me, when when you go from Memphis and then you went to Georgia Tech, which is when I coached the Hawks, Bobby Cremins came there as the coach. So it was when he had some great point guard you almost, right? I mean, legit. He had so many great players. And what was it like when you're a West Coast guy, and then, and as far as going to school and everything, and then you go to Memphis, but now you're in Georgia Tech, which is a whole other beast, really, and stuff like that. Tell me about your experience there.
Yeah, coach, it's interesting. First of all, as you know, being with the Hawks, Atlanta has grown if you fly into Atlanta right now, all you see is cranes all over the place because buildings are being built like
Yeah.
crazy. It's one of the most fastest rising cities in America. It's sort of like it's like Miami without the ocean, if that makes sense. And
Yep.
it's constant buildings being built. It's Silicon Valley is really coming to Atlanta. There's so much going on there. So it's a great place to live. It's a great city. Obviously, as much as I travel when I was a head coach there, what's interesting about that is one of the great perks about the job, believe it or not, is the Atlanta airport.
Mhm.
Because of Delta being the hub, you can fly anywhere you need to the day of and get back at night. Rarely would you have to
That's
stay
right.
overnight. And as much as I was gone or busy with my job, it was a big deal to be able to get home with your wife and kids, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just even late at night so you can wake up in the morning and maybe take him to school. So that was a great advantage. Georgia Tech obviously has a lot of tradition and history there, but it is a tough school.
Mhm.
It's a bachelor's of science. There is no bachelor's of arts. Of all the FBS programs that play football and basketball, coach, Georgia Tech's the only one that has a bachelor's of science, nothing of a bachelor's of arts. So
I
if
didn't
you're
know
going
that.
to school there, which is an incredible school, you're in science, math, all those type of things. So I say all that to say this: when we were recruiting a kid, and when they told me, the first question I asked them, not about anything other than when I pick up the phone, I said, I'd be like, Johnny Joe, good as my Coach Pastner, da, 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 what math are you in? And if he would tell me the math that wasn't like what needed to be, I'd say, Johnny Joe, man, I appreciate you. Best of luck on everything. When he would tell me a certain math class that he was in that it met the requirements, I was doing jumping jacks and cartwheels, because that's just the way it is. That being said, you don't want your airplanes that you fly on or the bridges that you drive over being built by people learning that online. Everyone there there was no online classes, if any, maybe one or two. Everything was in person, in class situation because it was such an engineering school.
So Cremins is a friend of mine. I've known him since he was a high
And
school
he did an
player.
incredible job. I mean, it
We
was
were
incredible.
five-star campers together,
Yep.
okay, back in the day. He's not
You both
ex
have the same color hair, by the
he's
way.
not exactly a PhD in math or science, Bobby himself, and I guarantee you, I coached at least 3 of his point guards. I had Kenny Anderson, I had Stephon Marbury, and I had Mark Price at different times. I think only Mark Price stayed to graduate. I think
Yeah,
those 2
well,
other guys, I don't think Bobby went over to science with math
no,
program with them. I think they
well,
all
look,
left after their freshman year and went pro.
Coach Cremins is, first of all, I mean, obviously, just
Incredible.
an awesome coach, awesome human being.
Yep.
Did an incredible job. Obviously, you look at the success that he had there.
Yeah.
Um, but I would also tell you this: this was interesting with Mark Price, who's
Great.
better than anybody because you've coached him. I mean, the guy is one of the great players in the
Amazing.
NBA history. I mean, his
Yep.
shooting, his free throw shooting. I mean, he's just, and when when you're next to him, he's not real
So little,
tall, and he's
right?
really unassuming. When I say unassuming, like, you wouldn't if he was just walking along the street, you might not know that's Mark Price unless you follow
That's right.
basketball,
Exactly.
and one of the greatest players. But this is where I knew, um, how the game has evolved, and the interesting of how it ages all of us. So we were in the arena there, and there was a kid on campus, and Mark Price was in town. Of course, remember Mark Price very well, knew who he is. He was in the gym, walked by, I introduced him, because he was right there, and boom, boom, boom. I told him about, this kid and da da da. And Mark kept on going. And the kid asked me, Coach, who is that guy? And I said, that's Mark Price. And I pointed up to like his jersey being retired there in the arena. And I thought to myself, you know what? That kid wasn't even born when Mark Price played.
Exactly.
And I was just thinking, as we keep evolving, Coach,
Yeah.
a lot of these kids we recruit weren't even born when Michael Jordan played.
Nope.
And eventually it's going to be keep going down the road like that. And it just shows you how, time sits still for nobody.
No, it's the amazing thing now. As you're going through, you had a kid that's playing tonight in the playoffs, Alvarado, okay, at Tech, and he played great for you, right, in the tournament?
Right. He was
Unbelievable.
he was great.
He's
He played with such a chip on his shoulder, Coach. He played with an edge.
he's a
Tough
Brooklyn kid,
heart,
man.
Brooklyn kid, tough
Yeah,
and hard nose all the way around.
and he was in New Orleans here, and I'm here in Baton Rouge, and I love the way he played, and it was a great trade by the Knicks to get him to come home. They needed someone like him, and he's really been good for them and good for their squad because he's one of those guys that he'll muck it up. He'll get after it. He'll cause a problem even when there is none existing,
Right.
and that's what I like about him, and stuff like that. All the places you have had so many good players. How has your game evolved as a coach going through? You've had so much talent, but at different places, there's new problems to solve. How have you evolved from when you first started in coaching? When you were with Lute Olson, one of the greatest iconic coaches ever in basketball, college basketball, and men.
Yep.
Then when you go to work for one of my favorite human beings in Calipari, who's you know the godfather of college basketball coaching. I think he understands our business so well, and and now has you became the head coach at Memphis, and then you went to Tech, UNLV, and even your time at ESPN, I think is almost like having a sabbatical,
Yep.
and you get to observe other people in a way and stuff like that. How have you changed over years? Or evolved, not changed is a better word, evolved
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's a few things, Coach. Yeah, there's no doubt I'm 48. My first head job was when I was 31. And I'm a better coach today than I was at 31. I wish I could go back to when I was 31 and know what I know now to
Yeah.
from that back then. And so I guess that's part of maturing, evolving, being better. Um, and so I think probably I even have a clearer picture of what I believe of how I want our teams to look, of how we want to play, what we want to do, what's important to me and not important to me, in able to change, to have the success that we want to have. But also the game has evolved.
Mhm.
The game has evolved, and I think if you are not willing to evolve with the game, and that you're going to get left behind. That's not an X's and O's or a strategic thing, because that still there's a lot of still things remain the same back when you were
Sure.
with Coach Daly and the Pistons, even to today's game, on what's important, how do you win, all the different things that maybe don't even show up in the box score of those plays that impact winning. What has completely changed has been the way, how the game has evolved into what it is today, of all the off the court stuff with the NIL, with the transfer portal, with the new rules and regulations of just what you can and can't do. I mean, Coach, when I got the job at Georgia Tech in Memphis, the first few weeks on the job, all I thought about was recruiting and going around and seeing all the local high school and AAU
Sure.
coaches and making sure I protect all the different points of who I needed to be, and and they and made sure they saw me and got high school coaches involved and AAU coaches involved. Coach, when I got the UNLV job, my first 30 days, it wasn't recruiting, it was strictly fundraising because I had to go raise money to
Wow.
try to go buy players. Whether we like that or not, that's the reality of it. So, whereas my other 2 stops, you're making sure you're going, because all it was a scholarship you could offer a kid.
That's right.
And now it wasn't had anything to do with recruiting. It was strictly a complete situation where you're going to have to go get great players. And to get the great players, you better have the finances behind you to do that. And so, understanding that, we said, okay, I'm not going to be able to get that type of same money as everyone else. So we're going to have to be really good at evaluating, finding undervalued guys, finding guys underneath the radar. And then look, I think about this, coach. Part of the sell could be, come here, let me get you better, love our system. We're gonna have sweat equity and pour it into you, boil everything out of you to get you to be the very best you can be. And then we'll increase your value and you can move on to a higher, I mean, almost like you're a junior college, believe it or not. So I
Makes
say all that
sense.
to say that it's just completely changed, evolved, not as much the X's and O's and the strategy part, because there's still a lot of similarities. Yes, the game has moved to more 5 out and whatever, but it's all the other stuff that you have to, as I call it, wearing loose fit clothing
Ooh,
and
I like
being willing to adapt and change on the fly and being flexible as you go day by day.
I met you when you were 21 and you were in Arizona. Chuck and I met you in Phoenix. I said, "This kid's gonna be really fantastic." Now you're a mature man. Holy cow. You and I did a clinic 15 years ago at the Atlantis we were talking about the other day, and I said, "Boy, this guy's gonna be a pretty damn good coach, boy. It's really something." What have you evolved now that you've learned? And I agree with you. I talked to Isaiah Thomas's birthday was a couple of days ago. He turned 65.
Wow.
When I went to the Pistons, he was 27 the year we won the championship. And I said to him many times, him and Dumars, who's the president of Pelicans, I said, "I want to tell you, you guys were getting screwed because I know much more now." Just like you said,
Yeah.
I'm a much better coach now than I was then. He said, "You didn't have to tell us. We knew." I know. But if the Running Rebels, the way you're going to play, what is the way you want to play offense? I know every recruiting pitch. We're going to play fast. We're going to do this and that. But I watched you coach this year. You are a coach that is what you should be. It's all about winning and putting your team in position to win. So, what is it when you get the players you want to have? How's Josh going to
Yeah.
coach?
Well, as we discussed at the beginning part of this about how my teams were at Memphis and how athletic and fast and
Oof,
above the rim and what we did there. Interesting going to Georgia Tech. I was the exact opposite. We played all print, like through
I
and
remember
through,
that.
in with all the back doors, like not like elbow entry and just go play a little away screen, like really the real true cutting movement Princeton offense. Plus, we played a unique zone.
Yes.
Then now coming here, being the running Rebels, you are the running Rebels, and you are in Vegas, which is Showtime. Style of play, you winning's first and foremost, but being able to play above the rim, being able to attack, being able to play downhill. Um, and so we want to play fast.
Yeah.
You are exactly right, coach. Who doesn't say they want to play fast? Every recruit, everyone says, but there's
We,
a difference
yeah.
that by saying it and actually doing it. And the only way to really do it is, and I've believed this in all my teams in my 15 years as a head coach, I really believe my teams have been in elite physical shape. You can't play fast if you're not in elite physical condition. If your VO2 max of your cardiovascular shape is not at a high level, like if you don't have the mentality to, like, you're training for the Tour de France, where you're going 8 hours in a bike ride in the Alps. Again, we're not really doing that, but with that type of mentality of training, you can't get your VO2 max to be at the level of the shape that you have to be in order to compete on what you're asking your players to do on both ends of the floor night in, night out.
So Pat Riley has the same philosophy as you know. We're going to have the best conditioned, hardest working, toughest teams in the NBA. Those are controllable things. You don't
Yep.
need talent to do that, correct? How do you do it? And I've always, you don't do it with just suicides and stuff like that. How do you do it in today's modern day age
Yep.
with
Well,
science?
2 things. One is we play a lot of 5-on-5 and
Thank you. Thank
and
you,
a
brother.
lot of 5-on-5 and a lot of 5-on-5 games where there's like it's moving this way and you've got to be able to, we call it different, we call it pace drill or different things that we do 5-on-5 very fast and keep it moving and not a lot of stoppage. Obviously there's time to stop to teach, but a lot of it is just moving. And if there's something of a stoppage, you're like the ball keeps right, you're just right moving on it.
Good.
There's very little stoppage. Secondly, yes, I agree. Back in the older, the old days, in a sense, like you could run in tons of line drills and this
Yeah,
and that, or run around the track. I'm not saying that's not good. I would love to do that. However, I've tried to evolve and try to learn and study and be better. How do we get guys' cardiovascular shape better? The VO2 max, as I talked about, just and 5-on-5, because basketball shapes is different than just running. You're just
100%.
running around the track. So it's a different type of shape. So how do you have that same simulation? To me, there's two sports that do that: boxing and cycling. And boxing and cycling are really the two to me after studying it. Now, boxing, our guys aren't going to get in there and fight in the ring. You can get on a heavy bag and hit for 3 straight minutes, which is without playing defense. Like if you're hitting a bag for 3 minutes, think of the intensity of that, and you don't have to be on defense. That's why boxers, the shape that they're in is unbelievable, because you got to be offense and defense. But cycling, what you can do is it's great. You can increase your cardio, but you can keep light on your knees, light on your legs. It doesn't have the same pounding, so it keeps you healthy. Same thing with we call it the boost. It's an anti-gravity treadmill, or you can do underwater treadmills, or you can do things in the pool that are very light on your legs and knees and feet that still increases your heart rate. And so you can still do all
I
these
like
type,
that.
even to the point of treading water. You look at water polo guys, the athletes
Unbelievable.
of water. I mean, to be able to stay above water, you have to be in such great cardiovascular shape. So there's so much things to do. But I still believe 5-on-5 is so important. And doing that with that in intensity and with the mentality and everything that you're doing in your off part cardiovascular conditioning is to try to train like you would be in the Tour de France.
This might be one of the best learning things I've ever had on here because honestly, Josh, I don't know if I've ever had anyone talk about that. And I couldn't agree more. 5-on-5 is the coaches that do drills nowadays, do your drills in the summer and before you start regular practice. Do your drills, teach them all the stance, all the fundamental crap you want. But you need to play 5-on-5. That's the thing. And that's where the conditioning happens. I applaud you for that. I go into college practices 2 months, 3 months into the year, and they're doing 4-on-4 shell. And I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing, man? What are you doing now?" I mean, so I love that you're doing that. That's fantastic.
Coach,
S
I would like to ask you a question because I talk to our team about Dennis Rodman all the time. And I have a picture of Dennis Rodman in our locker room of him. Um, um, there's a picture. I don't know if any means necessary. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And this is
Yep,
when he was with the Bulls, not with the Pistons, but
yep.
he was stretched out, full body length, going for the ball,
Diving for the ball.
diving for the ball. And I know, there's a lot of off the court things about, but on the court, his ability to rebound. And I had a track coach because I had some of our guys at Georgia Tech in the offseason actually run and learn how to run with the track coach at Georgia Tech. He helped train the sprinters for the Olympics. So I had our guys in the offseason, a couple guys, how to improve their strides and stuff. He says the best guy he's ever seen run is Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, highest knee
Yep.
thing, like the ACC ref, Jeffrey.
Jeff Anderson.
love Jeffrey. You know, he doesn't
Yep,
go anywhere.
yep,
Rodman went somewhere,
yeah.
but
But could you tell me a little about Rodman, just his ability to rebound and
yeah, Dennis is the total person. First of all, he came in the NBA at 27 years of age. He's a rookie.
wow,
Finished at NAIA schools, Southeast Oklahoma.
Southeast
Uh,
Oklahoma.
yep, and from Dallas. No dad in his life. Raised by mother and sisters. Worked as a janitor at the Dallas Fort Worth Airport. No degree, high school. Literally, this coach literally found him, brought him into the school. When we take him in the second round, and he had mono when he went to the combine, you know, so he didn't play as great. There were, I think, only 28, 26 picks in the first round back then. But Dennis goes there, and then when I coach him, I immediately see that this guy, he's an absolute genius basketball-wise. Smartest player I ever coached. Knew
Wow.
everything, knew everything. Scouting reports, he knew what every player on the court could do, which gives you a lot of feel into education of how we're educating our people nowadays in college, et cetera. This guy was an absolute genius because he studied and knew what was important to him. Also, he was the first player I ever had in 30 plus years that ever knew where the ball was going because he studied it, where the balls would go on. If he shot from here, it's going to go there.
Yep.
Yeah. When we recruit a lot of white guys, we say, oh, he recruits his area. He never gets a ball outside of his area.
Yeah.
Dennis got any ball outside of his area. Had an amazing ability to keep best offensive rebounder I ever saw. And because if he couldn't grab it, he would tip it to himself, if you remember. He
Yep.
used to tip it to himself.
Yep.
Is a Hall of Fame player. Chuck and I never ran one play for him, ever. Not even throwing him a bone. But we allowed him once a game that if he got an offensive rebound, he could literally dribble it to the three-point line and shoot a three-point shot. We didn't care what happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
just as a reward.
Yeah.
But
Good for you
when
guys.
you
I think he's one of the great players. I mean,
and
I don't think people understand how great of a
and
player
and,
he
and the
didn't
funny,
score a lot. It was all about rebounding.
but he was also, as your track coach at Tech said, when he ran the lane on the break, there was no one that ran it wider and faster, and he could finish with a dunk at the end. He was a great left-handed dunker, even though he was right-handed. And he just filled the lanes. Now you see guys in the NBA to run the lane, and almost one guy can play all three of them. You know, they got out, touched the sideline, he ran. But Dennis was he was also, because of his family situation, he was looking for father figures, and so Chuck, when Chuck and I decided to leave the Pistons, Chuck had been there for longer than I, of course, and we went to New Jersey. Dennis refused to play, just refused to play, to the point where they wouldn't trade him to us. So they literally, he wouldn't come to camp. We played an exhibition game against the Pistons at the University of Michigan. He came to the game only and left and never went back there and was traded to the Spurs.
Wow.
That's
Didn't
how
know
he
that.
got there. I'll tell you the last part about Dennis. We would play him 48 minutes a game after a while because he was bionic. He was in that VO2.
Yeah.
He was in that kind of shape.
Yeah.
So we played him 48 minutes. And now when Bob Hill, who's a friend, coached him with the Spurs, Popovich was the GM. If you remember, you were maybe a young guy, that they had David Robinson, and he took him out in the Western Conference Finals. They'd take him out of the game. Dennis took his shoes off, sat on the
Yeah.
baseline.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember.
And I remember Chuck and I took the job in Orlando, and they come up to us and said, how did you get that asshole to not take his shoes off? Chuck didn't even break stride, and he said, we never took him out of the game. And that is a great thing about coaching. Why take a guy out of the game if he's not tired or in foul trouble?
I'm with you.
Right? I mean, oh, they can only play X amount of minutes a game. Says who?
No, listen, I'll let the guys that say stay in there. Just that's where I believe in conditioning, because if a guy's just if they're producing, let them play 40 minutes. College is 40 minutes, so yeah, no problem.
So we had Dominique Wilkins in Atlanta as a rookie, and Mike Fratello came out of the UB Brown school, and we played starters 32 minutes, sub 16, and, Mike says, "We gotta get Dominique out," and I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, he might be tired." I said, "I'd rather have a tired Dominique than a fresh the guy that was coming in the game for him," you know?
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I'll take that anytime.
That's right.
Yeah, but, you get players like that. You had some guys at Memphis that were just incredible athletes, and when you get guys like that, our job, I think, is to create an environment for them to succeed,
Yep.
and I heard Sam Presti says this all the time, Josh. I want anyone that comes to work in the Spurs organization in any capacity that they look back and say, "This is the best I've ever performed in my career," in anything, whether a trainer, an analytics person, a player, a coach. And I think that's our job as players. And I love what you said earlier about I want players, and you do too, to be the best version of themselves when they come there. And if as Nick Saban says, if their value skyrockets, then we did a good job with them.
That's right.
We did a
No, and
good job.
that is part of the deal, and especially more so now than ever. Because coach, I took when I took the job here, I had we had to sign 13 new players or whatever, 15 guys, and coming over this year, I had to sign it. We got to sign 13, 13 more new players, and then
So,
next year I'm probably going to sign 13 more. I mean, that's just the reality of of where we're at, and going back to what talking about wearing loose fit clothing, this is the deal, this is the reality of it, and if you complain about it, are there challenges with the current model? Of course there is. You and I both know that. But if you are negative about it and complain about it, it's going to leave you behind because it's everything right now. It seems like it's moving in real time and things are happening so fast in real time that you've got to try to be constantly thinking ahead of the curve. And you mentioned about like Coach Calipari, he was so far ahead of his time in a lot of the ideas that he had, probably even back to even with Coach Tarkanian. When you
mhm.
think about it, that here at UNLV, he was ahead of his time on some of the things he was pushing for with the NCAA, and but even Coach Calipari's ideas and things like that, you've got to be always forward thinking. Otherwise, the way they're moving at the speed that they're moving it, you're going to get, you just get left behind.
Like I laugh at, and I say this, I love every coach. I want every coach to keep his job, etc. But you have to be every player. When I speak to colleges, men or women's teams, every woman wants to be a professional women's player now, which is fabulous. And
Awesome.
every men's player, even walk-ons at schools I speak at, they want to play somewhere professionally.
Yep.
Okay. Why is the NCAA, why wouldn't we change our rules to play 4 quarters like every other league in the world? Why wouldn't we advance the ball like the women's game does in the last minute of play at least, so the coaches don't look like complete ass that they can't inbound the ball with 2 seconds to go and get a shot at the basket. They're throwing the ball to the other team full court. Why would you do that when everywhere else in the world, I go to China, I've been to China 17 times to teach, and their 14-year-old kids are playing with a shot clock there. 8 seconds to get it over the timeline, 24-second clock from the time they're 14. They can do it, and we can't. That's coaching. That's the coaching business, unfortunately.
Well, the what's they have what's they have evolved some of the rules now, somewhat similar to the NBA, as in terms of, and I'm going to ask you a question, Coach, about this. And I'm not trying to steal your spotlight and be the interview you,
No,
but
I
you deserve
actually
to be interviewed.
I would actually welcome you to do that.
No, but one is, they are doing the new thing now with the replays where you have one challenge, sort of like the NBA with the challenge thing. They have some of that. They do when you do offensive rebound the ball, the reset goes to 20, not
20.
30. I know in the NBA it goes to 14
14.
because it's a short 14, 24-second shot clock. So there's some things like that. Um, but you know what's interesting on all this, and this is where I would be question ask you that now in FIBA or international rules, the offensive goaltending, you know, you can take the ball off the rim.
Sure.
In NBA, you're not allowed to do that, nor in
No,
college basketball.
correct.
Do you think the NBA and or college should adopt the international rules, or do you think everyone should adopt the NBA rules? I guess that would be my thinking.
Yeah, I think eventually all the international kids, as we're seeing now, how many of them want to come to college, right? In the US.
Yeah,
Every kid wants to play in the NBA anywhere in the world, right? If they're good enough. Okay.
yeah.
And the best way to do it is to come through the college system. It's better than the club system over there, my opinion. Okay. So, yes, we should play NBA rules. And I do like the rule about taking the ball off the rim. Gets a little risky on free throws, though,
Of
because you
course.
can take it. But uh, that's the least of my rule
You know,
changes that I.
it seems like in you know the and again you've been there, you've been at the very highest level, and you've coached both in college as well too at such a high level. But it seems like in the NBA, so much of its coaching is about ATOs because of there's so many. It seems like there's so many timeouts, and in college is probably and tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. It's more of course, you gotta have good players, but no matter what side you NBA co but it's more about the flow in college, where in the NBA, it's so much about ATOs. Am I right on that or
Well, here's the thing: 88% of all out of bounds plays in college are underneath. 88% of all out of bounds
good
in the
point.
NBA
Yep,
are on the side. See, if you
gotcha,
have a violation and if you have traveling, um, a one shot foul, everything's side out in the pros.
gotcha.
Everything's out of bounds on the baseline. So that we don't have any practice. And a really exciting thing is to have a timeout, foul and extend it, and then try to score late in the game. ATOs are important. The average for you side out of bounds plays, most college coaches say we got 4 of them. In the
Right,
NBA, you have 12 to 16 different plays that you're not drawing up. They know them. They know them. The only
gotcha.
thing you're doing in your timeout is saying, you got 3 guards in the lineup. You're saying, Josh, you're going to take the ball out. Normally, you're the guy receiving it, but
And in
we're
the
playing
NBA,
3.
you're demanded to know that. Like, if you don't know,
Oh,
if you can't unless you're am I right? I mean, I tell our guys, they'll cut you, right? I mean,
oh
you
no,
just
it's your business, but you're not going to class, and
yeah,
that's why they get better skill development. That's why they get better, become better shooters, because they don't have to worry about
yeah,
anything but basketball.
yeah,
But you're right, and it makes the game better. Yeah, the officiating in college, the rules and the way they're doing them, they're just we should make it more uniform
yeah.
for
I understand.
everyone. Better for the referees too. Trust
Right.
me, they would enjoy it. But I think the biggest thing is that I hate in college that if you get a technical foul, it counts as a personal foul. Why would you ever do that? That was so stupid.
Right.
Why? It makes no sense whatsoever. Why I'm an advocate now. We work so hard to get a kid to come to our school, yet we're gonna go on the road someplace and we're gonna screw them and we're gonna get 5 fouls and get the kid out of the game. We should have 6 fouls in college. Anyway, I wanna
Well,
see the kids
I
play.
I'm curious, tell me what your thoughts, because you were kinda in the heyday of the, the '80s, '90s of NBA, early 2000s in the NBA.
Yeah,
What do you th what twofold question, what's your take now about this load management, guys sitting out? Because I remember when I grew up in Houston, Texas, watched I mean, I was a huge Houston Rockets fan with the key
sure.
I don't I still
Hakeem
tell
Olajuwon?
people don't give people don't realize how great Hakeem Olajuwon's footwork was so unbelievable, and coach, he doesn't get talked about enough as one of the great and there was times when he would be because of his religion, he wouldn't drink water or eat food because of the of Ramadan,
Ramadan, yeah.
and he would go out and have 34 points, 17 rebounds, and 4 blocks. People don't talk, but he would never sit out of a game, ever.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so
you
I'm
go and
curious
look
what
at,
your take is on today based on, and could you tell me about and what's your thoughts on Akeem?
yeah, no, I love Hakeem, and I always say, when my friend Stan Van Gundy said that, "Hey, Jokic is the best player in the world of ever." I said, "Stan, Stan, you forgot about Kareem? You forgot about Olajuwon? I mean, it was like, he's never played Jokic has never played against a real low post center like Hakeem,
Right. Right.
like Patrick, like, I mean, just like Shaq.
Yeah.
Never played against Shaq. Shaq would just he destroyed people, physically. Didn't have the skills, but he would hurt you, you know? But Olajuwon, shot blocker, turnaround jump shot. I mean, he was so special, and they did such a great job, and Rudy T was just an amazing
Unbelievable.
coach for him,
Unbelievable. But do you what do you think on on people sitting out of games? I'm curious to see what
Oh,
your
no,
thoughts.
no, no, we we would joke, and I used to say to Joe and Isaiah in the last X amount of years when they slowed management, I said, "What would you guys have said if I told you Chuck and I had told you you're sitting out against the Bulls tomorrow night?" They said, "We got a better idea. You and Chuck sit out. We got this." You know? Yeah, they were competitors first. They would never do that,
Yeah.
you know? Now, one thing we did is we made them and we practiced a lot more too. But we would practice, but we would tell a guy like Isaiah and them that were playing 38 or 40 minutes, we'd say, "Get dressed for practice." And then we'll work around them in practice. They're not gonna go like some of the subs did, but we only had 12 players back then. Now they got 18 guys in the gym, 15 real guys, 3 two-ways.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of time, but we don't practice enough either.
No. You're right.
And,
You're right.
unfortunately, and now all of a sudden, 7-game playoff. Now you have coaches, no travel for the most part. Now you see teams locking in. Now you see teams getting 38 and 40 points and a half, where normal regular season is 70, 75 and a half. Now all of a sudden you see playoff basketball. My thing is, I believe that, and I say this for college coaches, don't play the way you play against your non-conference schedule that you buy on guarantees. Play against the best, the way you play all year long against the way you're going to play in the league that you're in. We never adjusted the way we played in the season to the playoffs. That we played playoff basketball
Oh, you're
82 games, and
right.
I think that's the way you develop habits,
Right.
you
Totally
know?
understand. Yeah.
So I think, Josh, defensively, what have you evolved to with all the switching and stuff? What have you evolved to and that?
Yeah, I I think about it back. I wish I was switching more way back when.
You had the
Now,
athletes to do it,
yeah, and I
especially at
didn't switch.
Memphis.
We were
Yeah.
just kind of like, we were really good. We were good defensively, but I didn't.
Yes, you were.
I have really evolved into switching more on and off the ball. I think a lot of the game has evolved it. Now, you can also gotta be listen, plenty of really good teams don't switch either, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But what you can't do is do lazy switching, the point switching. "Hey, you just go over there and you go over there." No, because that you switching takes actually so much time and effort and just discipline and accountability and communication because you gotta talk, touch, take, come together. You've gotta be aware of everything. Your head's gotta be constantly on a swivel. You've gotta be able to defend in the post. I like to front the post. I think the key with switching is can you defensive rebound? Defensive rebounding is the key no matter who's on who. And the second thing what I've said when you talk about defensively, coach, on evolving on that, um, is, what I would say evolving on that would be, because when I was at Georgia Tech, for example, and or Memphis, I had the continuation of our team year in, year out. So they knew our defensive system. At Georgia Tech, we ran a unique zone,
You're right, I remember that.
one of the best zones in the country. I I recognize now this first year, I try to do some zone and then it wasn't as effective. And then the whole team leaves and I got to do a whole new, the whole new team's coming in. I'm like, you don't have the time to do all those
That's right.
the zones this way. We're doing that way because you're starting over. So you almost have to simplify it. Whereas sometimes, like at Georgia Tech, when my teams got older, our zone defense was so good because I didn't have to reteach it because it was just like it was part of their DNA.
That's great.
Now, because of it, you have to be smart with your time to making sure you're as ready to go in November and December than you are at any point because you have a brand new team every year. So thinking those things through that those are some of the eye-popping, lessons to learn that I learned from this past year that will hopefully allow us to be better defensively going into next season.
I think that is a key point what you made there. Time and just like team building, you used to develop a kid over 4 years.
Yep.
Tom Izzo, who's like my age, and we talk all the time. Tom said to me, "Brendan, what the F am I gonna do?" I said, "Well, you gotta do what you did in 4 years and 8 months now."
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
4 years and 8 months, yep.
he said, "Fuck you." Fuck you. But Tom does, and that's why he's a Hall of Famer,
No,
but
he's one of the best
he's
ever.
the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Josh, I promise you, you need to get your ass out and recruit more, okay? So I really appreciate you taking the time. This is so great. You're an amazing guy. Anything I can do for you or your program, please let me know, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in July when I'm out there.
Absolutely. Thank you, coach. It's always an honor to be with you and just appreciate you so much. You know that you're a Hall of Famer, you're a legend, and anyone in the game knows what you've meant to the game. So very thankful to be on with you.
Thanks, and best to your dad.
Will do. Thank you,
Thanks.
coach.